Welcome to the Folktale Project. This is Dan Scholes. Today we have another Brazilian folktale, and this is the last in this book. I've actually read every other story in Tales of Giants from Brazil by Elsie Spicer Ells. So this story, How the Giantess Guimara Became Small, is our final one. As a note for this story, I just wanted to mention ahead, there is a point in the tale where Elsie Spicer Ells uses the term Negro in this story. This is How the Giantess Guimara Became Small. Once upon a time, a prince called Di João went hunting with a number of companions. In the deep forest, he became separated from his comrades and soon found out that he was lost. He wandered about for a long time, and at last he spied what looked like a mountain range in the distance. He journeyed toward it as fast as he could travel, and when he got near to it, he was surprised to find out that it was really a high wall. It was the Great Wall, which bounds the land of the giants. The ruler of the country was an enormous giant whose head reached almost to the clouds. This giant's wife was nearly as enormous as he was, and their only child was as tall as their mother. Her name was Guimara. When the giant saw Di João, he called out, "Oh, little man, what are you doing down there?" Di João narrated his adventures to the giant, and the giant said, "Your story of your wanderings interests me. It's not often that little men like you pass this way. If you like, you may live in my palace and be my servant." Di João accepted the giant's offer and stayed at the palace. The giant's daughter, Guimara, was very much pleased with Di João. He was the first little man she had ever seen. She fell deeply in love with him. Her father, however, was very much disgusted at her lack of good taste. He preferred to have a giant for a son-in-law. Accordingly, he thought of a plot to get Di João into trouble. The next day he sent for Di João to appear before him. "Oh, little man," he said to him, "they tell me that you are very proud of yourself, and that you are boasting among my servants that you are able to tear down my palace in a single night and set it up again as quickly as you tore it down." "I never made any such boast, your majesty," replied Di João. He went to Guimara and told her about it. "I am an enchantress," said Guimara. "Leave it to me, and we will surprise my father." The very next night, Guimara and Di João tore down the giant's palace and set it up again exactly as it was before. The giant was greatly surprised, and he suspected that his daughter had meddled with the affair. The next day he sent for Di João and said to him, "Oh, little man, they tell me that you say in a single night you are able to change the Isle of Beasts into a beautiful garden full of all sorts of flowers, and with a silvery fountain in the center." "I never said any such thing, your majesty," replied Di João. He told Guimara about it, and she said that it would be great fun to escape from her room that night and make over the Isle of the Wild Beasts into a lovely garden. Accordingly, Guimara worked hard all night long, helping Di João to make the Isle of the Wild Beasts over into a garden full of all sorts of beautiful flowers and with a silvery fountain in the center. The king was greatly surprised to see the garden in the morning, and he was very angry at Guimara and Di João. Guimara was so frightened at her father's terrible wrath that she decided to run away with Di João. She counseled him to procure the best horse from her father's stable for them to ride. At midnight, Guimara crept out of her room and ran to the place where Di João was waiting for her with the horse, which traveled 100 leagues at each step. They mounted the horse and rode away. Early the next morning the Princess Guimara was missed from the royal palace. Soon it was discovered that Di João was gone also, and also the best horse from the stables. The giant talked over the matter with his wife. She told him to take another horse which could travel 100 leagues at a step and go after them as fast as he could. The giant followed his wife's advice, and soon he had nearly caught up with the fugitives, for they had grown tired and stopped to rest. Guimara spied her father coming and turned herself into a little river. She turned Di Joao into an old negro, the horse into a tree, the saddle into a bed of onions, and the musket they carried into a butterfly. When the giant came to the river, he called out to the old negro who was taking a bath, "Oh, my old negro, have you seen anything of a little man accompanied by a handsome young woman?" The old negro did not say a single word to him, but dived into the water. When he came out, he called the giant's attention to the bed of onions. "I planted these onions," he said. "Aren't they a good crop?" The bed of onions smelled so strong that the giant did not like to stay near them. The butterfly flew at the giant's eyes and almost into them. He was disgusted and went home to talk it over with his wife. "How silly you are," said the giant's wife. "Don't you see that Guimara has changed herself into a river and changed Di Joao into an old negro, the horse into a tree, the saddle into a bed of onions, and the musket into a butterfly? Hurry up after them at once." The giant again went in pursuit, promising his wife that the next time he would not let Guimara play any tricks on him. The next time that Guimara saw her father coming, she thought of a new plan. She changed herself into a church. She turned Di Joao into a padre, the horse into a bell, the saddle into an altar, and the musket into a mass book. When the giant approached the church, he was completely deceived. "Oh, holy padre," he said to the priest, "have you seen anything of a little man accompanied by a handsome young woman passing this way?" The padre went on with his mass and said, "I am a hermit padre, devoted to the Immaculate. I do not hear what you say. Dominus vobiscum." The giant could get no other response from him. At last he gave up in despair and went home to talk things over with his wife. "Of all the stupid fools, you are the most stupid of all," said his wife when she heard the tale. "Don't you see that Guimara has changed herself into a church, Di Joao into a priest, the horse into a bell, the saddle into the altar, and the musket into a mass book? Hurry again after them as fast as you can. I am going with you myself this time to see that Guimara does not play any more tricks on you." This time the fugitives had traveled far when Guimara's parents overtook them. They had almost reached Di Joao's own kingdom. Guimara threw a handful of dust into her parents' eyes, and it became so dark that they could not see. Guimara and Di Joao escaped safely into their own kingdom. When they had started out on the journey, Guimara had said, "Oh, Di Joao, whatever happens, don't forget me for one single minute. Think of me all the time." He had promised, and he had remembered her every instant on the journey. However, when they reached his own kingdom, he was so happy to see home once more after all his adventures that he thought he had never before been so happy in all his life. After one has been living in Giantland, it is pleasant to get home, where things are a few sizes smaller and a bit more convenient. Then, too, it was very pleasant for him to see all his friends again. He was so happy at being home that just for one little minute, he forgot all about Guimara. When Di Joao remembered Guimara, he turned around to look at her. When he saw her, he could hardly believe his eyes. Instead of being a tall, tall giantess with her head up in the clouds, she reached just to Di Joao's own shoulder. Di Joao was so surprised that he had to sit down in a chair and be fanned. He couldn't say a single word for 18 minutes and a half. His breath had been so completely taken away. "It is a good thing that you happened to think of me just as soon as you did," remarked Guimara. "I was getting smaller and smaller. If you had neglected to think of me for another minute, I should have faded away entirely, and you would have never known what had become of me." When Guimara became small, she lost her power as an enchantress entirely. Her eyes were always a trifle sad because Di Joao had forgotten her for that one little minute. She never went back to Giantland, but reigned as queen of Di Joao's kingdom for many years. And that is the Brazilian tale of how the Giantess Guimara became small. It's quite the tale. It has some very Russian feel to it. The running away and the transformation of the giant and Di Joao and all their belongings 3 times. It has that feel. At least to me it does. And I enjoy it. And again, this is the last story in this book. This is Dan Scholes for the Folktale Project. Don't forget that you can subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play, Overcast, anywhere you like to get your podcasts. You can always follow us on Twitter at Folktale Project. You can find us on Auto Radio, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, Spotify, anywhere you like to listen. And you can always head over to folktaleproject.com, where you'll find a new story waiting for you every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. As always, thank you so much for listening.